everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new to this channel, my name is Anais. I'm the open source developer advocate at Aqua Security, and I record also videos on my own YouTube channel related to content that I come across, I'm interested in, or that I think is worth sharing with this community, such as this video. Now, this video is walking you through all of the must-know Linux commands. If you're getting started with a Linux-based operating system, you likely have to navigate your files, your file system through the terminal. You have to kind of interact with different processes, with different programs through the terminal. No matter what your learning journey is, if you're just a Linux operating system based user, or if you actually wanted to get started with system administration and cloud computing and related topics, then this video is really for you as a starting point. Now, this video is based on a chapter of the book How Linux Works. I'm currently deepening my own Linux knowledge, and as part of that, I'm just reading through this book to see if there's basically something I didn't know yet. There's lots I didn't know yet. However, with the Linux commands I'm sharing here in this video as well from one of the chapters, most of the commands I have used and come across in one way or another before, or that I'm using actually on a daily basis. And these are commands that are really, really useful for everyone getting started with Linux-based operating systems and just Linux-based tooling, such as container images that are based on Linux principles, or other related technologies in the space. Now, as always, I have a blog post that accompanies this video. It's also linked below in the description, so do check that out if you want to see the specific commands that I'm using in this video. Now, what we are going to do first is we actually run on my machine. We run a Ubuntu container image, and we entered that, basically the shell in that container image. Now, depending on which laptop machine you are at, you might not have access to a Linux-based operating system. Now, a container image that runs Ubuntu, for example, or another Linux-based operating system, works highly similar to like a virtual machine. It's not, no, you shouldn't use a full-fledged on Ubuntu container image or similar. It's not very advisable. But for the purposes of this video, we can use a container image that's based on Linux-based operating system. Now, there are other container images that you could use. You could also use your own operating system, open the terminal there. It is really up to you. Now, I'm on an M1 MacBook, and it's not going to be the same as using for example, Ubuntu. So that's why I want to make this experience and the blog post basically in a way that can be replicated across different machines. So make sure you run Ubuntu in that case, for example. And then with this command, we are entering the shell, the terminal. And basically, as soon as I exit it, this container image is going to get removed from my container image list. Now we are here in pretty much in the directory of this container image. Now, the first command that we're going to learn is ls. ls lists the files and directories that I have in my current path. Now, that's the first command that we're going to learn. The next one is making a new directory. It's with mk mkdir, make directory basically. And we're going to create an example directory. Now, ls can also list files and directories in a specific directory path. So you can specify the directory path as well. This is done, for example, as follows: ls and an example. Now, you don't need the / in this case. Now, in this case, there's nothing yet in that directory path example. However, we can enter that directory. That is done with the cd change directory. That's what it stands for. Command, and we can change into our example directory. Now, as you can see, we have now moved into the example directory. If I again run ls in here, there's nothing in this directory. Now that we know how to create files, I can create a new file, mkdir test1, and I can create another directory called test2. And then I can also create files. Now, create creating files is done with the touch command. And I can create, for example, a test.txt file and a test1.txt file and a test2.txt file. And now if I run again the ls command, I can see here that I have my two new directories, the test1 and the test2 directory, and I have my three txt files, text files. Now I can also, with the touch command, create, for example, a test.json file as well, which is going to be added to my current directory in the path that I specified. Now I could also create a new file in a specific directory, for example, in the test1 directory, and I would that as such. I would specify test1 and then test.json. And then if I list in the test1 directory all of my files, I can see that this file has now been created in that specific test1 directory. Now this is how you create directories and files in specific directories, how you can list files and directories in your current directory or in other directories. Next, I want to actually copy a file from my current directory that I'm in to the, for example, the test1 directory. So I'm saying copy cp test.txt into the test1 directory. Now, if I now list my current directory again, you can see there's still the test.txt file. In addition, in the test1 directory, I also have the test.txt file. Now, those are the same, it's basically the same file copied, like duplicated in a way to the new path that I specified, in this case, into the test1 directory. Now, instead of copying it where it duplicates the same file, what I can do instead is I can move the file as well, and that's done with the mv command. So I could say, okay, I actually instead want to move the test.txt file into the test2 directory. So I'm moving it, and now if I query the current directory, I don't have my test.txt file anymore in my current directory as I had before, because now it's in the test2 directory instead. Here, test.txt. Now I can change directories with the cd command. The cd is change directory again, and I can do test2, and I'm in the test2 directory. Now, if I'm not sure, let's say I don't know this path, right? It's not provided to me. It's just a username, right? I don't know where I'm in my file system, right? Like Linux is basically a massive file system, and I might not know where I am, right? Where I am and how to navigate myself around. I can do pvd, and it will tell me the directory path that I am, right? And then I can say, okay, I actually want to change 2 directories up. And now I changed 2 directories up, and we are again in the directory where we started off from. Now I can go again into the example directory, and we are back in my example directory as well. Now that we know how to create files and directories, we want to learn how to delete files and directories. Now we can delete a file. Let's say I want to delete the test.json file. I can say remove test.json. And this removed now my test.json file. Now for directories, if I say ls, I want to remove the test2 directory. I can say generally for directories, remove directory test2. However, the test2 directory is not an empty directory, so I can't remove it. If I have macdir test, I can remove the test directory because it's an empty directory. So I could do that, and then there is no directory. However, with the test2 directory, since it's a non-empty directory, what I have to do is remove -r. So recursively remove everything within the directory, and then the directory test2 is removed, including its content as well. So this is how the remove command works. Be very careful with the remove command, especially removing entire directories. Just as an FYI. Now, next thing is we want to go ahead and edit different files. So in the test1 directory, I have 2 different files, and in the current directory I have test1 and test2.txt file. Now I want to edit them. They are generally 2 popular editors. One of them is Vim, that you might have heard of, and the other one is Nano, that you might have heard of. Now both of them are currently not installed in here. On this Docker container image, because container images come with a few less, let's say, options, tools than an entire operating system would. If you're using an Ubuntu-based operating system, for example, on your laptop, on your home computer, you likely have some form of editor installed already. Nano, for example, would come, I think, with Debian and Ubuntu as a default. So you should have access to them directly. So if you would want to install Nano on this container image with Ubuntu, we go ahead and say update first. We don't need to use sudo because we are logged in as root. So we can first update everything that's currently there. And then we can install Nano with install Nano. Now, if we're already root, we don't need that. Generally don't want to be root. It's just for the purpose of this demonstration that I am. Now, once this is done, we can, with the clear command, we can clear our previous history, let's say. That doesn't mean that our commands are still not there. We can, with the arrows on your keyboard, you can navigate to your previous commands. However, it's kind of nicer to clear everything up every once in a while. Not sure how to describe it. So we want to edit the test1 and test2.txt file. And for that, we're going to say nano test1.txt. And now test editor, simple test editor opens, right? So I can write in this test editor, this is a test. Yes, a very smart test. So once I have written whatever I wanted to write or have edited whatever I wanted to edit, I can then exit it, and then I want to save it, and I press enter. I want to save it. Now, if I now use the cat command basically prints everything in a terminal that's within a file. For the test1.txt file, I see the content that I've written into the file. This is a test. Yes, a very smart test. I know, very amazing. So next I want to also edit the test2.txt file. So nano test2.txt. And this opens up again, and I can say this is a test. Yes, another test. It doesn't get boring. And then yes, I want to edit it as well. And now I have the same for test2. And here's the content of test2. Now, if I have 2 very identical files and I want to know exactly how they differ, I can use the diff command. So I can say with the diff command, test1.txt and test2.txt. And this will print basically the difference. So the difference in the first one is, yes, a very smart test. In the second line, and then it's basically, yes, another test, it doesn't get boring, is the difference in the other file. So this is how you can see the difference between 2 files. Very exciting, I know. Now next, you might have lots and lots of different files and directories in your current directory, and you're looking for a very specific one. Like I have, for example, directories with, 50 other directories, and I'm looking for some very specific directory. For example, all of the directories that contain the word Trivi. How do I look for it? Well, with echo and then star, you can see all of the files, including directories, that are in your current path. Now, if I want to look for one that contains test at the beginning, I can say test echo test star, and it will print everything at the beginning. Now, if I say test1, it will print everything that has test1 in the beginning. If I, however, say star and then 2, it print everything that has 2 at the end of the file. Actually 2.txt I would have to use in that case. So here's our test 2.txt file. Now, if I want to say anything that has 2 in it, I would say star echo star 2 star, and I would print any directory that has a 2 written in it, or any file that has a 2 written in it. And that's kind of how you can find specific files in your directory. Now that's one thing. Now if I go to, again, the root directory that I entered in, and I want to, for example, grab files that have a specific word containing in them, I can use the grep command. So root in the etcd directory, everything within etcd directory, and it prints everything that has root within it, which is very handy if you, like, the grep command is very handy if you want to look for specific words across files and directories for it. Now, moving back into my example directory, again, I have here those 2 files where I've written stuff in it. Now I can say I want to print the first line of my test1.txt file. This is going to print the first line. I can say I want to print the first 2 lines of my test2 file. And I could say I want to print just the last line of my test2 file. That's done with tail and then -1, or whatever number of lines I want to print. So it doesn't get boring. It's like the last line of that file. Again, if we look at the entire content of that file.txt, we find the entire content of that file, and this is the very last line, line number 3. And with tail, you can see the last line, for example, or the last lines, depending how many you want to specify. With head, you can see the first lines of the file that you want to read. And this, again, allows you to, like, look at what's contained within a specific file without having to open that file, which allows you to navigate different files, different file systems, different content much faster. Next, we want to look at variables. So I can say shell, and then same, I don't know, put it as a variable. So this is a shell variable. If I say echo shell, it's going to print what's within that variable. That is a shell variable. It's specific to this terminal, to this shell that I have running here, and specific to the session. If I close it and we open a terminal, it's going to be gone, this variable. Now, if I say export shell, and then it's basically, I'm exporting that variable and it becomes an environment variable. Now, what's the difference between shell variables and environment variables? Only if you have environment variables, the shell can pass those environment variables, like the terminal can pass those environment variables into different programs. That's why usually you want to specify environment variables to use them within a command, within a larger program, instead of shell variables. So that's that. You can see processes with the ps command. PS lists all current processes. Now, as you can see, these are the 2 processes I have currently running. The first one is bash, as in like this shell, which is running right now. And there's basically a process for it still, which was the first process that was used within this Ubuntu container image. And the ps command is the 306 process that has been running. If I run another ps command, it's going to be the 307th. Now, if I do other commands now, for example, the cat test2, and I run ps again, it's gonna be the 309th command, because cat has actually, I think, done 3 different processes. So in cat, if you run the cat command, there are ultimately 3 different processes that are executed within the Linux kernel. And that's first, it's going to open the file. It's the first step. It's going to read the file, and then it's going to write what's in the file into the terminal. So cat ultimately uses 3 different process IDs to execute that, as far as I know. Now, if I run ps again, it's going to be the 310th. And it's kind of how you can see different processes that are running right now. For example, if your machine is working overtime, you can see what is actually taking up the compute resources. Now, in the blog post, I'm also showcasing how you can, for example, read the man pages that basically tell you further information on different commands. There's also an info CLI command within most Linux-based operating systems that you can use. It's the info or text info. Now it's not within the container image, within the Ubuntu container image. However, I just listed here because those commands can be very helpful. And then here I'm also additionally explaining, as part of the PS command, what basically the information that you're provided with actually stand for. Now, this is all information taken from the book, as well as I have to complete this part, as well as the Linux directory structure explained is taken directly from the book. So if you're curious about more information regarding how Linux works internally, really check out that book. It's a really good book, How Linux Works, 3rd edition. Again, I'm reading that right now through O'Reilly. There are probably other resources on how you can get the book. Now, there's also what I found interesting as part of the chapter was also how you can actually see the log history of, for example, every command that got executed as a sudo user, as a super user. So things like that is very useful to find or to use those Linux commands. Now, why am I recording this video in the first place? I usually don't talk about anything Linux or process terminal command based, I guess, besides obviously anything that I'm using related to Kubernetes. So this is new territory for me to talk about. Now, obviously I've used different Linux commands to different extent, right? It's part of your day-to-day if you're working with anything with tech related, but talking about it is a bit different. So I'm just want to get more comfortable with that as well. So again, as always, I really hope this video was useful. The blog post that this video is based on, as well as the link to the book, is linked below in the description of this video. If you would like to see similar kind of introductory tutorial video content, then please do let me know and I can create more of this kind of content. It doesn't take too much time. I usually don't focus on this type of content, but sometimes it's useful. So do let me know if you like to see this kind of content and I can create more of it. And I would really appreciate if you could give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for upcoming videos to make sure that more people see my content as well. I really hope to see you in one of my next videos. Have an amazing day, week, evening, morning, wherever you are. Bye bye.